I'm standing in what used to be my kitchen, watching my husband's mistress pose for selfies next to my grandmother's recipe box, which he's apparently turned into a decorative centerpiece for her farmhouse chic renovation. But before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps give me the strength to speak my truth. Now let's get into my story. She doesn't know who I am. Tiffany, that's her name because of course it is, thinks I'm an interior designer here for a consultation. She has no idea she's giving a house tour to the woman whose entire life she helped destroy 3 months ago. The woman whose husband she stole, whose home she's now redecorating, whose medical journals are still being delivered to the mailbox because I never got the chance to change my address before the divorce papers were signed. The previous owner had such ethnic taste, she's saying, wrinkling her nose at the spot where my great-grandmother's quilt used to hang. Very urban. I want something more refined, you know? More American. I smile and nod, documenting everything with my phone camera. The prescription bottles scattered across the counter. The designer handbags that cost more than my current rent. The basement door she keeps glancing toward nervously. What Tiffany doesn't know, what my cheating ex-husband Marcus clearly never told her, is that I'm not just any interior designer. I'm Dr. Zara Williams, Chief Surgical Resident at Metropolitan General Hospital, the same hospital where Marcus works, the same hospital where I've spent the last 3 days uncovering evidence that the man who destroyed my marriage is running a prescription drug ring that's stealing identities, defrauding insurance companies, and putting patients' lives at risk. And right now, as she's showing me around the house I used to call home, Tiffany is about to give me the final piece of evidence I need to destroy them both. Want to see the basement? She asks, her voice dropping to an excited whisper. That's where Marcus keeps his special projects. Special projects. If she only knew. I'd love to, I say, following her toward the stairs. I have a feeling this is going to be very educational. 3 months earlier, I'd walked into Marcus's office to surprise him with lunch, and found her straddling him in his desk chair. Tiffany Morrison, pharmaceutical sales rep, with her skirt hiked up and her hands tangled in my husband's hair. They'd been so absorbed in each other that neither noticed me standing frozen in the doorway for a full 30 seconds, long enough to memorize every detail, including the patient files scattered on the floor beneath them. Zara! Marcus had jumped up so fast he'd knocked Tiffany backward into his computer monitor. This isn't, we were just. But I was already walking away, my surgical clogs silent on the hospital linoleum. Behind me I heard Tiffany giggle. Actually giggle and whisper. Oops. The divorce had been swift and brutal. Marcus's lawyer had painted me as an unstable resident who'd become obsessed with her attending physician husband. My lawyer, overworked and underpaid, had advised me to settle quickly. He's claiming the house came from family money, he'd said. We'd have to hire forensic accountants to prove otherwise. Do you have $50,000 for expert witnesses? I didn't. So I'd walked away with my medical degree, my crushing student loan debt, and a reputation as the crazy ex-wife who'd tried to destroy a good man's career. Marcus kept everything else. The house I'd helped renovate, the cars I'd co-signed for, the investment accounts I'd funded with every penny of my resident's salary. Within 72 hours of the papers being signed, Tiffany had moved in. But as I stood in what used to be my kitchen, watching her rifle through paint samples, I realized something that made my blood run cold. On the counter sat a stack of medical journals addressed to Dr. M. Williams, but they weren't Marcus's journals. They were mine. Surgical journals I'd never canceled, still being delivered to my old address. Your husband has excellent taste in literature, I said carefully, nodding toward the pile. Tiffany laughed. Oh, those aren't his. Marcus says they belong to his ex-wife. Some nurse who thought she was going to be a doctor. Can you imagine? He says she was always trying to be something she wasn't. Some nurse. I was chief surgical resident at Metropolitan General Hospital. I'd published 2 papers on cardiac surgery techniques. I'd literally saved Marcus's career when I caught a medication error that would have killed his patient. But to him, to them, I was just some nurse. How ambitious of her, I said, my fingers tightening around my purse strap. Right? Marcus says she was always reaching above her station. Anyway, enough about her. Let's talk about the master bedroom. I want something that screams luxury, you know? Something that makes it clear this is a successful man's home. What Tiffany couldn't have known, what Marcus had conveniently forgotten, was that I had a particular set of skills. Not the kind you learn in medical school, but the kind you develop growing up as the daughter of Dr. Eleanor Williams, the first black woman to chair cardiothoracic surgery at Johns Hopkins. When you're a black woman in medicine, you learn to notice everything. Every slight, every inconsistency, every lie that could destroy your career if you're not 3 steps ahead. My mother's first lesson. Information is ammunition, baby girl. But you better know how to load the gun before you pull the trigger. During my residency, I perfected what looked like casual conversation but was actually strategic intelligence gathering. A comment about weekend plans revealed Dr. Peterson's gambling problem. A joke about energy drinks exposed Nurse Bradley's Adderall addiction. An offhand remark about vacation homes uncovered Administrator Johnson's embezzlement scheme. I never acted on these discoveries. I simply cataloged them, understanding that in a profession where your reputation could be destroyed by a single false accusation, knowledge was the ultimate insurance policy. As Tiffany led me through the house, my medical training kicked in: observe, assess, diagnose. The Hermes bag on the counter. Retail price $8,000, impossible on a sales rep's commission. The prescription bottles glimpsed through the bathroom door. OxyContin from Dr. Martinez, Adderall from Dr. Thompson, Ambien from Dr. Richards. A pharmacy's worth of controlled substances from different prescribers. Red flags everywhere. You know, I said, photographing a hideous crystal chandelier she'd installed. I specialize in homes for medical professionals. I'd love to meet your husband. Get his input on the design. Oh, you'd love Marcus. He's head of cardiology at Metro General, so he has impeccable taste. She gestured around the master bedroom like she was presenting evidence. Sometimes I think he loves his patients more than me. You know how dedicated department heads can be. Department head. I nearly dropped my phone. Marcus wasn't head of cardiology, Dr. Patricia Chun was. Marcus was an attending who'd been passed over for promotion twice. Once for a malpractice suit involving a patient death. Once for what the hospital diplomatically called interpersonal concerns. Metro General, I repeated, my voice steady. Impressive. Very competitive department there. Impressive, I murmured. I'll have to look up his work. That night, I sat in my studio apartment, 400 square feet of everything I had left, and began to dig. Within an hour, I'd unraveled Marcus's web of lies like a surgeon removing a tumor. The house? Purchased with a loan I'd co-signed, not inherited family money. His department head position? A complete fabrication. He'd been written up twice for inappropriate behavior with female staff. But the prescriptions I glimpsed were the real smoking gun. Using my hospital credentials, I accessed the prescription monitoring database, completely legal for a physician investigating potential drug diversion. What I found made my blood run cold. Mrs. Chun, 82, diabetic grandmother. Her insurance showed $15,000 in opioid prescriptions she'd never received. Kevin Martinez, 19, college athlete. His medical record now listed him as a chronic pain patient and possible addict, destroying his scholarship eligibility. David Park, recently deceased, somehow still receiving prescriptions 3 months after his death. This wasn't just infidelity or garden variety fraud. Marcus was destroying lives, stealing identities, turning grieving families' loss into profit. The scope was staggering: hundreds of patients, millions in fraudulent billing. And at the center of it all, my ex-husband playing God with other people's medical records. I printed everything, my hands shaking with rage. This was bigger than revenge. This was about stopping a predator who wore scrubs instead of a mask. The next morning I called Tiffany. I've been thinking about your renovation, I said. I'd love to put together a comprehensive proposal. Could we meet again this week? Maybe when your husband is home. I find couples' input invaluable. Actually, her voice dropped to a whisper, Marcus is out of town at a conference until Friday. Why don't you come by Thursday evening? We can really dive deep into the design process, and I can show you some of the special features he's added to the house. Special features. I had a feeling I knew what that meant. I spent the next 3 days planning with surgical precision. Every move calculated, every risk assessed. This wasn't just about justice, it was about survival. If I moved wrong, Marcus would destroy me and continue hurting patients. If I moved right, I could stop him forever. Step 1. Build the team. I called Dr. Patricia Chun, my former mentor. Patricia, I need 5 minutes of your time. I have evidence of prescription fraud that could destroy Metro General's reputation if it breaks in the media first. She agreed to meet within the hour. Step 2. Get law enforcement invested. Detective Sarah Rodriguez owed me. I'd saved her daughter's life during a complicated appendectomy. Sarah, remember when you said I could call in that favor? I need you to listen to something. Step 3. Bait the trap. I practiced my shocked expressions in the mirror, rehearsed my innocent questions, perfected the art of appearing harmless while gathering deadly evidence. Thursday morning, I bought a burner phone and downloaded a recording app. Thursday afternoon, I tested the video quality on both devices. Thursday evening, I stood outside my former home, watching Tiffany through the window, knowing that in 1 hour Marcus Williams's career and freedom would be over. The rain started as I walked to the door, as if the universe was washing the slate clean. Thursday evening arrived gray and drizzling. I parked 3 blocks away and walked to my former home, my heart pounding with each step. Tiffany greeted me at the door with a glass of wine and a conspiratorial smile. "I'm so glad you could make it," she said, leading me inside. "I have so much to show you." She led me to the basement, my former sanctuary where I'd painted watercolors after 16-hour shifts. Marcus had turned it into a pharmaceutical warehouse that would make Pablo Escobar weep with envy. Industrial shelving lined every wall, packed with prescription bottles organized by drug type and dosage. A commercial-grade pill counter sat beside scales accurate to the milligram. Computer monitors displayed spreadsheets tracking inventory, profits, and distribution routes across 3 states. But the centerpiece was a wall-mounted whiteboard covered in patient information, names, insurance numbers, medical histories, prescription limits. Real people reduced to profit margins and billing codes. Jesus Christ, I breathed, and it wasn't an act. I know, right? Tiffany beamed like she'd just shown me her prize-winning rose garden. Marcus is brilliant. Do you know how much money doctors waste on legitimate prescriptions? We're cutting out insurance company bureaucracy, providing people with medications they need at prices they can afford. And the patients on the board? That's the genius part. We use their insurance information for billing but ship everything here. They never know because their doctors aren't monitoring refills properly. It's victimless. The insurance companies can afford it, and we're helping people who really need these medications. Victimless. I thought about Mrs. Chen's maxed out insurance forcing her to ration her diabetes medication. The teenage athlete whose medical record now branded him a drug addict. The families discovering their dead loved ones were somehow still filling prescriptions from beyond the grave. Mind if I document this for the renovation? I pulled out my phone, fingers steady despite the adrenaline flood. I'm thinking we could really optimize the workspace flow down here. Oh, definitely, Tiffany said, posing next to the pill counting machine. Marcus will be so excited to see your ideas. I took photo after photo, making sure to capture the prescription pads, the patient files scattered on the desk, the inventory sheets detailing their operation. Through the camera lens, I documented everything Detective Rodriguez would need for a search warrant. "You know," I said as we headed back upstairs, "I'm curious about something. How did you and Marcus meet?" Tiffany's cheeks flushed pink. "Well, it's kind of a romantic story. I was calling on his office. I work in pharmaceutical sales, and he was going through this terrible divorce. His wife was making his life hell, trying to take everything from him. I could see how much he was suffering. That must have been difficult for him. Oh, it was awful. She was so bitter and vindictive. Marcus said she even tried to sabotage his career, filing false complaints with the medical board. Can you imagine? A nurse trying to destroy a doctor's reputation. The false complaints. I'd never filed any complaints against Marcus, but apparently, that was the story he'd crafted to explain away any potential investigations into his activities. Some people just can't handle rejection, I said sympathetically. Exactly. Marcus says she was obsessed with being a doctor herself, but she just didn't have what it takes. He tried to be supportive, but eventually, he had to protect himself. By stealing my house, destroying my credit, and turning me into the villain in his love story. That's when Tiffany's voice dropped to a whisper, and she glanced nervously toward the stairs. "There's something else," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "Something I didn't tell Marcus because I was scared he'd blame me." I lowered my phone, sensing the shift. "What is it?" "The DA came to my office last week." The words tumbled out in a rush. Not to the pharmaceutical company, to me specifically. They knew my name, my address, my work schedule. They said they'd been building a case against a major prescription fraud ring, operating out of residential properties. My chest tightened. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I swear I said I didn't know anything about residential deliveries or prescription irregularities. But they knew things. They knew about Marcus, about this house, about the basement setup. One agent even mentioned they'd been monitoring unusual traffic patterns to this address." The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. If the DA had been watching the house, they'd documented every person who came and went. They'd seen me arrive tonight. They might think I was part of the operation. "How long have they been watching?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Since January, maybe earlier. They showed me surveillance photos." Her hands were shaking now. "Cars in the driveway, people going in and out, delivery trucks. The agent said they were just waiting for the right moment to move." January. I'd moved out in December after the divorce. The DA had been watching my former home for months, building a case against an operation I'd known nothing about. My fingerprints were all over this house from when I'd lived here. My mail was still being delivered here. And now I'd been caught on federal surveillance taking photographs of their evidence. "Tiffany," I said carefully, "did the agent say anything about wanting cooperation? About deals for information?" She nodded eagerly. "They said people who provided substantial assistance in breaking up the ring could avoid serious charges. They gave me a card and told me to call if I remembered anything useful." I stared at her, seeing the calculation behind her frightened eyes. She wasn't just scared. She was planning her exit strategy. And if she decided I was a threat to that strategy— The front door slammed open with a force that rattled the windows. Marcus stood silhouetted in the doorway like an avenging angel, still in surgical scrubs, his face a mask of exhaustion and barely controlled rage. "Tiff, whose car is?" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me, his expression cycling through confusion, recognition, and finally, something that made my blood freeze. Not terror. Not panic. Satisfaction. "Well, well," he said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him with deliberate calm. "Dr. Zara Williams. Right on schedule." Tiffany bounced toward him like an excited puppy. "Marcus, you're home early. This is the interior designer I told you about. She has such innovative ideas for the basement workspace." Marcus smiled at her. A cold, predatory expression that transformed his entire face. "Tiffany, sweetheart, meet my business partner." The words hit like a physical blow. "Business partner? What are you talking about? Did you really think I was stupid enough to run this operation without insurance?" Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like text messages. "Meet Dr. Zara Williams, chief surgical resident, and the brilliant mastermind behind our entire prescription fraud ring." He turned the phone toward me, and I felt the floor drop away. The messages were from my number, time-stamped over the past 6 months, discussing every detail of the operation in language that clearly showed intimate knowledge and willing participation. "Patient batch ready for processing. Chan, Martinez, and Park identities verified clean. Increase OxyContin orders by 30%. Market demand is up. DA patrol patterns suggest Thursday night deliveries are safest." "Those aren't from me," I whispered. "Aren't they?" Marcus's smile widened. "Your phone number, your medical knowledge, your detailed understanding of prescription monitoring systems. You've been coordinating with me for months, Dr. Williams, planning drop locations, identifying high-value patients, even suggesting security improvements." The genius of it hit me like surgical lightning. Marcus had access to our shared phone account, an account I'd never bothered to change after the divorce. He'd been spoofing messages from my number for months, building an electronic trail that would paint me as the mastermind while positioning himself as a reluctant accomplice. "You're setting me up," I said. "I'm protecting myself," Marcus replied. "When the DEA moves in, and they will, Probably tonight, given your little photography session. They'll find a brilliant surgical resident who used her medical credentials and hospital access to build a multi-state prescription fraud ring. They'll find her bitter ex-husband who was manipulated into participation by his obsessive ex-wife. And they'll find his innocent new girlfriend, a pharmaceutical sales rep who was seduced into the scheme by promises of easy money. Tiffany was staring at him with growing horror. Marcus, what are you saying? I'm saying Zara is going to federal prison for a very long time. Her medical license, her career, her freedom, all gone. While we walk away as victims of her manipulation. But then Marcus made his fatal mistake. He looked directly at me and said the words that would destroy him. The beauty is, even if you try to claim innocence, who's going to believe you? You're here in this house taking pictures of our operation, with months of evidence on your phone proving you're the mastermind. You played yourself, Zara. Game over. I started laughing. Not the desperate laughter of someone who'd been beaten, but the deep, genuine amusement of someone who just watched their opponent checkmate themselves. Oh, Marcus, I said, wiping actual tears from my eyes. You magnificent, arrogant bastard. That was perfect. What? His confident smirk faltered. I held up my phone, showing them both the active recording app that had been running since I'd entered the house. You just confessed to everything. On camera. In high definition. With GPS coordinates and timestamps. Marcus lunged for my phone, but I was already backing toward the basement stairs. Don't bother. The recording has been uploading to secure cloud storage in real time. Even if you destroy my phone, the evidence is preserved on servers you'll never reach. You can't use that in court, he snarled. Single-party consent laws. Allow me to record any conversation I'm part of without your permission. I finished. I know the law, Marcus. Unlike you, I actually paid attention in those medical ethics courses. His face was sheet white now, the reality finally sinking in. You're bluffing. This is all elaborate revenge theater, but you have no real plan. I pulled out the burner phone I'd bought that morning. Sarah? It's Dr. Williams. I'm at the location we discussed with both suspects present. Yes, we have the full confession on tape, including the attempted frame-up. They're all yours. The color drained from Tiffany's face. Who's Sarah? Detective Sarah Rodriguez, Medical Fraud Unit. She's been outside for the past hour with DEA agents, waiting for my signal. You see, when I discovered your operation 3 days ago, I had a choice. I could call the police and let them spend months building a case you might beat with expensive lawyers and technicalities. Or I could help them build an airtight case by getting you to confess everything on tape, while surrounded by physical evidence. The sound of car doors slamming echoed from outside, followed by heavy footsteps surrounding the house. Marcus spun toward the window, his face a map of disbelief and rage. You played the long game beautifully, Marcus. I continued, my voice steady and surgical. Months of planning, fake phone records, elaborate framing schemes. But you made one fatal error in your master plan. What? He whispered. You assumed I was still the same naive resident you married. The woman who trusted you completely, who never questioned your stories, who believed in your fundamental decency. I smiled, and for the first time in months it felt genuine. That woman died the day I walked into your office and found you with Tiffany. The woman standing here now? She learned from the best. A black woman surgeon who taught her daughter that in a world designed to destroy you, information isn't just power. It's survival. The front door exploded open. The search warrant. Detective Rodriguez entered first, followed by federal agents in tactical gear. The house that had once been my sanctuary was suddenly filled with law enforcement personnel documenting every detail of Marcus's operation. Dr. Williams, Rodriguez nodded to me. I trust everything went according to plan. Better than expected, I replied, handing her both phones. Full confession, detailed explanation of the fraud scheme, attempted witness intimidation, and a comprehensive threat to frame me for the entire operation. It's all time-stamped and geotagged. As they read Marcus and Tiffany their rights, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just the quiet calm of a surgeon who'd successfully removed a cancer that had been killing everything healthy around it. Marcus Williams, Detective Rodriguez said, you're under arrest for medical fraud, identity theft, drug trafficking, prescription forgery, and conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. Tiffany Morrison, you're under arrest as an accessory to these crimes. As they were led away, Marcus turned back to me one last time. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is, I replied. It's been over for a long time. I just didn't realize it yet. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of Johns Hopkins Hospital, adjusting my new attending physician coat. The investigation had moved swiftly once Marcus confessed on tape. His medical license was revoked, and he was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Tiffany, who cooperated with authorities and provided evidence about the pharmaceutical supply chain, received a lighter sentence of 3 years. The house, my house, had been seized as part of the criminal asset forfeiture. But in a twist of poetic justice, the court determined that it should be returned to me, since I'd been the victim of fraud in the divorce proceedings. Marcus had used illegally obtained funds to maintain the mortgage payments, making the transfer of property part of his criminal enterprise. I decided not to move back in. Too many memories, both good and bad. Instead, I sold it and used the proceeds to pay off my medical school loans and establish a fund for victims of medical fraud, patients whose identities had been stolen, and whose trust in the healthcare system had been shattered. My mother had been right, as usual. Information was power, but knowing how to use that information ethically, that was wisdom. I'd learned the difference the hard way, but I'd learned it. The case had made national news, establishing new protocols for monitoring prescription patterns and strengthening the relationship between medical institutions and law enforcement. I'd testified before Congress about the vulnerability of patient data and the need for better oversight of prescription practices. But the real victory wasn't professional. It was personal. I'd reclaimed my narrative. I was no longer the bitter ex-wife who couldn't let go, the vindictive nurse who tried to destroy a doctor's career. I was Dr. Zara Williams, the physician who'd exposed a major medical fraud ring and protected countless patients from harm. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chan. Your new office is ready. Welcome to the faculty, Dr. Williams. I smiled and headed toward the elevator, ready to begin the next chapter of my life. Behind me, a young medical student was reading a newspaper article about the Williams case, discussing it with her classmates. Can you imagine? She was saying. Being brave enough to go undercover like that? To risk everything to expose the truth. I didn't correct her use of the word undercover. The truth was messier and more complicated. I'd stumbled into the investigation by accident, motivated as much by personal revenge as by justice. But if my story inspired the next generation of physicians to stand up for their patients and their principles, then perhaps that was enough. The elevator doors closed and I rode up to my new office, ready to heal instead of harm, to build instead of destroy, to use my knowledge and skills for the purpose they'd always been intended, to serve others and to do no harm. In the end, that was the most satisfying revenge of all, becoming the person Marcus had always claimed I could never be, and doing it with integrity intact.